All right, everybody. Welcome to Candy Bar Creep Show. I am your host, Brandon Anthony Tobatto, and on tonight's episode of the podcast, I really just wanted to go through and really dissect my all-time favorite zombie flicks of all time. This is going to be a top 10 list discussion, and I kind of just wanted to go through my number 10 spot all the way up to my number 1 spot, 10 being the least best of the list, and number 1 being my all-time favorite zombie flick ever. And it was kind of a difficult list to make because although my top 10 list of my favorite zombie flicks of all time hasn't really changed that much over the last decade or so, writing it down and actually formulating an actual list is difficult because you start thinking about other zombie flicks you haven't thought about in a while. Oh, I should put this one here, I should put this one here, I should put this one here. And you sort of start feeling like you're betraying the zombie flicks that didn't make it into your top 10. You sort of start feeling that way. So with that said, at the end of this top 10 list, I'm going to kind of go through a few honorable mentions that I didn't really mention here in the podcast itself, at least in the top 10 list, and we'll sort of just go through that little top 5 and mention them just very quickly, very briefly, wrap up those honorable mentions, and the episode will be done. So here on episode 4 of the podcast, let's dive in. Today, we delve into the realm of the undead, with a thrilling exploration of my personal top 10 favorite zombie movies. This subgenre, known for its spine-chilling narratives and heart-pounding suspense, has captivated audiences for decades, from the classic shuffling hordes to the more recent fast-moving variants. Zombie films have continually evolved, offering a unique blend of horror, drama, and sometimes even humor. In this discussion, we will be highlighting my personal top 10 favorite zombie movies of all time, at least as of January 2024, and even going through some honorable mentions at the end. So join me as we embark on this eerie journey through the world of zombie cinema, where the dead walk and the living fight for survival, right here on Candy Bar Creep Show. Okay, so let's start off our top 10 personal favorite zombie flicks of all time list. My personal favorite zombie flicks of all time list with the one and only Zombie 4, aka After Death, aka Zombie Flesh Eaters 3, aka all kinds of other names it was released under. It's a bizarre situation, the whole name discrepancy that all these zombie films went through upon their release. I'll have to make a whole dissection video of that whole thing some other time. But for now, let's dive into the movie itself. It's a quaint, quirky, little bizarre zombie film that I think is really quintessential when it comes to zombie films overall, especially Italian zombie films. It's definitely up there with Zombie 3, Hell of the Living Dead, all kinds of stuff like that. It is absolutely bizarre, absolutely weird. This is actually the version of the DVD that I rented from Blockbuster in the early 2000s. I'm not sure when this officially released on home video, but Blockbuster had this. I'm pretty sure it was this version that I rented when I first saw the film way back in the day. I pretty much loved it since the first time I saw it. I definitely think I liked it way more than Zombie 3, but a couple years later, when I was at FYE in our mall at the time, they had the Zombie 3-pack. I don't recall if it was the Zombie 3-pack Volume 1 or Volume 2, but this was one of the movies in it, and lo and behold, it was the same copy that I was used to renting from Blockbuster. Zombie 4, After Death. Very cool stuff. Very happy to own this within the Zombie 3-pack. I still have it, by the way. It's actually up on the shelves right now, but I was very happy to finally get the 88 films release of Zombie Flesh Eaters 3. Same film, just again, it's a different title. One of many titles. Haven't opened this copy yet to watch it on Blu-ray. I'm not sure if there's a 4K of this yet, but I hope there is soon. This is one of those zombie movies that I'm going to try to purchase as many versions of this movie as possible because I just love it so much. It's such a bizarre film that, like Zombie 2, I just got to have as much physical media variants of it as I can. But again, I'm rambling. Let's sort of dive into the meat and potatoes of Zombie 4 and see what's going on. After Death directed by Claudio Fragasso, stands out as a peculiar gem in the realm of zombie films. It's an Italian cinematic adventure set on a voodoo-cursed island, teeming with the undead, who are more akin to the resurrected zombies in Stephen King's Pet Sematary than your typical shuffling zombies. This peculiar aspect, where the zombies not only walk and talk, but also possess a chilling semblance to their former selves, adds a unique twist to the genre. The narrative follows a group of explorers, including Jenny, a young girl haunted by past encounters with these zombies, who find themselves stranded on the island. The film's bizarre yet captivating premise, enhanced by the backdrop of voodoo curses and an idol with protective powers, weaves an unforgettable tale of horror and survival. The plot of After Death is as unconventional as its undead characters. Researchers on a remote island invoke the wrath of the undead through voodoo and black magic, setting the stage for a horrific struggle between the living and the reanimated dead. The protagonist, Jenny, protected by a magical necklace from her mother, revisits the island as an adult with a group of mercenaries, only to face the resurrected nightmare of her childhood. The film's narrative is a roller coaster of tense encounters, unexpected alliances, and tragic endings, culminating in an ambiguous finale that leaves audiences pondering Jenny's fate. This narrative chaos, far removed from traditional zombie tropes, is precisely what makes the film an insane yet incredibly enjoyable watch for fans like myself, who revel in its offbeat charm. Delving into the film's production, After Death is a testament to the chaotic yet creative filmmaking era of Italian zombie cinema. Claudio Fragasso, alongside his wife Rossella Drudi, who penned the screenplay, crafted this film under challenging conditions in the Philippines. This context adds a layer of rawness and authenticity to the film's atmosphere. Featuring Jeff Stryker, known for his adult film career, and a cast whose voices were dubbed in post-production, After Death epitomizes the eclectic and unorthodox spirit of its genre. Fragasso's description of the film as the last gasp of Italian zombie gore films resonates with its unique place in cinema. A bizarre, unpredictable, yet fascinatingly endearing masterpiece that captures the hearts of its audience through its sheer audacity and unconventional approach to storytelling. Alright, so that was Zombie 4 After Death in my number 10 spot. Great little zombie movie. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's fantastic. It is so bizarre. But next up on the list, let's keep it moving. Unfortunately, like an idiot, a few years ago, I was selling a lot of my DVDs because I was sort of consolidating because we were having a new baby and I was sort of in panic mode. I was selling, consolidating my collection, making room. That I sold off a huge portion of my DVDs, including a lot of my zombie DVDs. And unfortunately, my number 9 spot, I sold the DVD. I've since bought it on Blu-ray, but I no longer own the DVD. I'm going to have to rebuy it on eBay or something because it's not for sale on Amazon.com, at least at any price that I'm comfortable paying, after the pennies on the dollar that I sold it for like an idiot. But anyways, here we go. My number 9 spot goes to Hell of the Living Dead, aka Zombie Creeping Flesh, aka Night of the Zombies, aka Virus. There's a million other names. It's a bizarre zombie flick from Italy. I do like it more than Zombie 4, obviously more than Zombie 3. Zombie 3 didn't make the top 10 list. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, this is such a weird... The first time I saw this on VHS in the mid to late 90s. I rented it from... It might have been from Videoland. It might have been from Movie Gallery. Movie Gallery is sort of at the time known also for having obscure horror movies that Blockbuster didn't really carry. And Night of the Zombies, as it was on the VHS tape that I rented, I'm pretty sure it was the same artwork as this. It freaked me out. There was a scene where they go into a village and one of the characters walks into a little like house, and there's like a person sitting with his back turned towards the camera, and then he swooshes around and you see his face all mangled and nasty. That sequence always really freaked me out as a kid, and I, have since seen it on DVD and then now Blu-ray, and I love the film just as much, if not more. Definitely crept up into my top 10 list over the last decade or so. I wouldn't have it in any other way. It is so bizarre, filled with weird stock footage. I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. Let's dive in to Night of the Zombies. Bruno Mattei's 1980 Italian horror spectacle, Hell of the Living Dead, aka Virus, aka Night of the Zombies, is a testament to the unique and bizarre realm of cult cinema. This film, set against the backdrop of a chemical disaster in Papua New Guinea that unleashes a zombie apocalypse, is a blend of horror, absurdity, and unintentional comedy that captivates its audience in an almost surreal way. The opening scene at the Hope Center No. 1, where a rat-induced chemical leak leads to the resurrection of the dead, sets the tone for the entire film. Its oddity is further amplified by the use of stock footage, primarily to depict the New Guinea setting, which is jarringly spliced into the narrative, creating a sense of disorientation and bizarre charm. Moreover, the zombies themselves, with their distinct grotesque makeup, add to the film's peculiar allure. This unusual mix of elements, along with a soundtrack borrowed from Goblin's previous scores, gives Hell of the Living Dead a strange, dreamlike quality that is both unsettling and captivating. The film's development history is as intriguing as its content. Mattei, under the alias of Vincent Dawn, was tasked by producers to create a film reminiscent of Dawn of the Dead, but with a lighter tone. Despite being his second choice, the script Mattei ended up using, penned by Claudio Fragasso and Rossella Drudi, aimed to bring a different perspective to the zombie genre, influenced by films like Soylent Green and Apocalypse Now. The production faced significant challenges, including financial constraints and time pressure, leading to the innovative use of stock footage and the reconstruction of locations in Spain to match those in the footage. Margaret Evelyn Newton, portraying the film's protagonist, brought a sense of earnestness to her role amidst the chaos, even insisting on minimal crew presence during sensitive scenes. These production nuances contribute to the film's cult status, showcasing the creativity and resourcefulness required in the face of limitations. As an avid fan of Hell of the Living Dead, one cannot help but revel in its eccentricity and embrace its flaws as a part of its charm. The movie's insanity lies not just in its storyline or zombie portrayal, but also in the haphazard yet somehow effective way it was pieced together. From the improvised scenes, such as the homage to Singin' in the Rain, to the second-hand Goblin score, every aspect of this film screams unconventional. It's a roller coaster of the absurd, a collage of horror cliches and inventive filmmaking that together create a uniquely entertaining experience. The film, despite its negative reviews and obvious inspiration from Dawn of the Dead, among other things, has secured a special place in the hearts of its fans, including yours truly, for its sheer audacity and the visceral thrill it provides. In the world of cult zombie horror, Hell of the Living Dead stands as a peculiar yet endearing masterpiece of sorts, a testament to the genre's ability to entertain and shock in equal measure. Alright, so that was Hell of the Living Dead, aka Zombie Creeping Flesh, Virus, Night of the Zombies, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's known for. That was number 9. It stands, great zombie flick, but the next one's even better, at least in my personal humble opinion. The next on our list, which is number 8 in the hierarchy of our top 10 list, my top 10 list, is the one and only Nights of Terror, Burial Ground, The Nights of Terror. Fantastic little Italian horror film, absolutely bizarre, probably the most bizarre European zombie film in existence. Not as far as the actual avant-garde nature of it, but it's just such a weird, quirky, a lot of weird choices made in the story and the actions of some of the characters. If you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is just absolutely insanity, and I love every single minute of it. This is the DVD release that came in one of my Zombie 3-packs. This is where I first saw the film. actually. I didn't see it till DVD days. I remember seeing the Burial Ground VHS tape at Videoland, that really cool artwork of, it looks like a desert scape with like a floating zombie head, and it says Burial Ground. It always intrigued me as a kid, but for some reason I never watched it. I never rented it, at least as far as I can remember. So DVD is the first time I can officially say, without a doubt, that I've seen Burial Ground. And the first time I watched it, it blew my mind. I was totally like, wow, this is insane. The zombies look great. The setting's great. The actors are crazy. Everything about this movie is just crazy. I keep saying the word crazy and same. That's really how you describe Burial Ground. Definitely my number 8 spot. I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. So without further ado, let's talk about Burial Ground, aka The Nights of Terror, aka Burial Ground, The Nights of Terror. And I'm sure there's been quite a few other names that this movie's been released under, but fantastic stuff. Let's get into Burial Ground right now. Burial Ground, The Nights of Terror, a 1981 Italian grindhouse zombie film directed by Andrea Bianchi, stands as a unique and bizarre masterpiece in the zombie genre. Its distinctive blend of horror and absurdity makes it an unforgettable experience for any horror film enthusiast, myself included. The setting of the film in a grand, slightly decrepit mansion, Villa Parisi in Frassati, is particularly captivating. The mansion, with its elegant interiors and overgrown exteriors, adds an air of gothic charm and suspense, making it a character in its own right. This backdrop provides a stark contrast to the gruesome events that unfold, enhancing the film's eerie atmosphere overall. The choice to shoot in such a grandiose location was a stroke of genius, adding a layer of sophistication to the film's otherwise raw and unsettling narrative. The zombies in Burial Ground are a far cry from your typical undead. Their appearance is a bizarre mix of the unnerving and the cartoonish, creating a surreal and unsettling experience. These aren't just mindless creatures either. They display an uncanny level of intelligence, using tools and strategies to besiege the mansion's inhabitants. The film's special effects, masterfully handled by Gino De Rossi and Rosario Prestopino, play a significant role in bringing these grotesque beings to life. Their unique look and behaviors contribute immensely to the film's strange allure. As a fan of the subgenre myself, I find this unconventional portrayal of zombies both refreshing and intriguing, a testament to the film's creative vision. But what truly sets Burial Ground apart, however, is its array of oddities, not least of which is casting 25-year-old Peter Bark as the young boy Michael in the film, an unusual and somewhat disconcerting choice that adds to the film's peculiar charm. The plot itself is a roller coaster of bizarre occurrences, from the accidental unleashing of an ancient curse to the unsettling incestuous subplot involving Michael and his mother. The film's climax in a zombie-infested monastery, culminating in a haunting and misspelled prophecy, adds to the film's cult status. Shot in just 4 weeks, Burial Ground is a testament to the power of imaginative and unconventional filmmaking, offering a viewing experience that is as strange as it is captivating. For those who revel in the peculiar corners of horror cinema, Burial Ground, The Nights of Terror, is a bizarre treasure, a film that embodies the very essence of cult horror weirdness. All right, so that was our number 8 spot, Burial Ground, The Nights of Terror, one of the most bizarre zombie flicks ever made. Definitely has earned its top spot in my top 10 list at number 8. Fantastic stuff. Would not change a thing about this movie except for the runtime. I think it should be about 15-20 minutes longer. That would have been fantastic. Maybe a few sequels. I don't know how they would have done it, but a few sequels to this movie would have been great. If we had 5 or 6 Blind Dead movies, we should have had 5 or 6 Burial Ground movies. That's just the way I feel about it. We should have had more. But the next movie on this list is even better, obviously. This is a zombie flick that I did in fact rent as a kid in the, I want to say, mid to late, probably mid 90s, like 95, 96. I was probably 8 or 9 the first time I saw this movie. I rented it from Blockbuster. Videoland the most obscure video rental center on the planet, which I loved as a kid, didn't have it. Movie Gallery didn't have it. But for some reason, Blockbuster, the most mainstream place on the planet, did have this on VHS. And it rocked my socks off the first time I saw it. I watched it alone. It was kind of a slow burn movie. But once the zombies came out and you saw the way they looked and the way they acted, feral in nature, bizarre makeup designs, bizarre story choices and location and spooky dynamics of the story, it really bothered me to my core. It really unnerved me in a way that most zombie flicks, at least at that time, didn't. It gave me a real palpable sense of dread that I, of course, couldn't describe as an 8 or 9-year-old. So the next few days after seeing the film, going outside at night, doing spooky stuff like taking out the trash to the side of the house, anywhere outside where there wasn't a lot of light, this movie was on my mind and really freaking me out. So this movie had I don't know what it is about it, but there was something so quietly intense about it. And it still freaks me out to this day. It freaked me out back then, but it still freaks me out to this day. And the movie we're talking about, at the number 7 spot, is the one and only Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. One of the best zombie flicks ever made, 1972. Great, great stuff. I think we should dive into this thing immediately and talk about Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and why it's my number 7 choice for my top 10 list. Let's dive in. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things distinguishes itself in the zombie film genre, merging horror with dark comedy. Directed by Bob Clark, this 1972 film innovatively redefines zombie narratives through its unsettling and moody setting. Filmed in a brief span of just 14 days on a very modest budget, Clark's vision is vividly brought to life on a remote island near Miami, Florida, creating an ideal setting for the spine-chilling story. The film's secluded island location heightens the feeling of isolation and entrapment, effectively immersing the viewer in the same stranded predicament as the characters. This immersive experience, coupled with the film's low-budget production, showcases the director's ability to craft a rich, atmospheric world that lingers long after the movie ends. The story of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things centers on a theatrical troupe led by a sadistic director named Alan, who accidentally summons the undead through a necromantic ritual. The film skillfully uses a creepy old house as a refuge for the troupe, enhancing the moody and atmospheric horror that stays with the audience. This setting is more than just a backdrop. It significantly contributes to the film's spooky ambiance. The film's unique combination of horror elements in a solitary, eerie location is what makes it a personal favorite of mine. This haunting setting, coupled with the director's twisted manipulation of his troupe, adds a psychological dimension to the terror, deepening the viewer's engagement with the story. The old house, with its shadows and secrets, becomes a silent but powerful character in and of itself, shaping the narrative's suspenseful and ominous tone. What truly sets this film apart are the zombies themselves. They are not just mindless creatures, but show unnerving signs of intelligence, making them even more terrifying. Their feral and unpredictable behavior, combined with a deeply unsettling appearance, creates a sense of genuine fear. This aspect, along with the film's close proximity to my home in Florida, adds a personal layer of fascination and admiration for Clark's work on the film. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things stands as a testament to the imaginative and boundary-pushing potential of low-budget horror films, embodying a haunting blend of horror, dark comedy, and a touch of the surreal and the weird. I love this film. Alright, so that was our number 7 choice with Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Great, great zombie flick. Masterpiece in its own right. See it if you haven't. Buy it if you don't own it. Fantastic stuff. It does not get any spookier than this, I promise. I promise. Well, maybe it gets spookier, but it's hard to beat this movie. It just is. It is. It really is. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things was also filmed not too far from my house. It's only like 2 or 3 hours away. Maybe less, actually, and that kind of blows my mind. That's awesome. But next on our list is number 6. It's been a personal favorite of mine since I was a kid. It is a horror comedy, and you can probably see where this is going. It's not Shaun of the Dead, I promise. It's not Shaun of the Dead. But it's my number 6 choice. I've loved it since I was a kid. It is a sequel to a pseudo-sequel. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding the film, I guess, since it came out. As a kid, all my friends liked it. I loved it. I never really saw a problem with it. I love the way the zombies look. I think the score, at least the score that came with the movie's release, the VHS release, and now the Blu-ray release, the one that came out with the DVD release, that score was trash, and you probably now have figured out what I'm talking about. But the movie's fantastic. It deserves none of the hate it's gotten. It really deserves a second, third, fourth look if you haven't gave it another shot in the last couple decades. Fantastic stuff. Great comedy, great scares. We, of course, are talking about The Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Fantastic stuff. Great, great, great horror flick. Fantastic zombie flick. Definitely has earned its place in my top 10 zombie flicks of all time. I'm actually surprised at myself for putting it at number 6, but I'm comfortable putting the ones ahead of it. Great stuff. The zombies are scary. The movie is played for laughs. It's more comedy than the first one. But the zombies themselves, as goofy as they act, they really do look frightening in this film. Tarman looks frightening. A lot of the hero zombies look absolutely frightening. The old lady who comes out of the ground and puts her glasses on, she's terrifying. There's some genuinely spooky stuff in this movie. You just gotta look for it, because it's more wrapped in comedy this time than horror, which is sort of swapped from the first Return of the Living Dead, which is more horror versus comedy. But still horror comedy nonetheless. I love the cast, the music, the contemporary soundtrack, the pacing, the story. Everything about this movie is fantastic. Everything about this movie is fantastic. I wouldn't change a thing. The only thing that I might change is adding another 15 to 20 minutes to its runtime, because I think it's just a little bit too short. It's a little bit too short. It should be longer. We need some kind of a weird director's cut. It'll never happen, but it's what we need. But anyways, I'm rambling like an idiot, so let's dive into The Return of the Living Dead Part 2 and see why it's earned its spot as number 6 on my top 10 favorite zombie flicks of all time list. Let's dive in. Return of the Living Dead Part 2, released in 1988, offers a unique blend of humor, horror, and distinctive style, reminiscent of the energetic chaos found in the 90s SNES game Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This parallel is so striking that it's hard not to see the film as a direct inspiration for the game itself. The plot weaves a wild narrative, following a group of zany characters who, much like in the first film, must contend with an army of brain-hungry dead people after the accidental release of a toxic gas known as 2,4,5-trioxin from a military barrel. The film, directed by Ken Wiederhorn, successfully mixes elements of horror with comedic overtones and, in my opinion, definitely deserves to be considered a cult classic. One of the most notable aspects of Return of the Living Dead Part 2 is its distinctive and unsettling makeup designs. The zombies, with their cohesive blue and brown hues, reflect a level of attention to detail that adds a layer of surreal uniformity to the film. This choice of colorization, emphasizing that all zombies originated from the same graveyard, adds to the film's eerie atmosphere. The characters of Joey and Ed, portrayed by James Karen and Tom Matthews, who also appeared in the first film, provide a comedic counterbalance to the horror. Their bizarre yet hilarious interactions contribute significantly to the film's charm, alongside a cast that delivers performances blending fear and humor seamlessly, especially the hilariously zany character of Doc, played by Phil Bruns. The film's success is further amplified by its memorable music, which enhances both the horror and the humor. The original score, distinct from the less favorable soundtrack released with the DVD in the early 2000s, complements the film's eclectic mood. The contemporary soundtrack, featuring the likes of Julian Cope, Zodiac Mindwarp, Big O, Leatherwolf, and more, is also fantastic in its own right. Moreover, the film's finale is a high point, delivering both terror and triumph in equal measure. The portrayal of Tarman Zombie. The portrayal of the Tarman zombie in this film, while not as intricate as its predecessor, remains a great standout, adding a layer of iconic horror to the film. Despite being a minor box office success, Return of the Living Dead Part 2 has cemented its place in the annals of zombie horror comedy, remembered for its unique blend of fear, laughter, and an unmistakably 80s zombie aesthetic. It is absolutely fantastic. Alright, so that was Return of the Living Dead Part 2 at number 6. Fantastic stuff, masterpiece of a film. But at number 5, we are moving on to a movie that I was very surprised to put over Return of the Living Dead Part 2, but I just love the movie so much. It is so intense. It is so genuinely scary. It came out at the perfect time. I was 17 when it came out. I saw it 2 or 3 times in the theaters. My uncle, who was a diehard fan of the original film, absolutely loved this film. I think everybody loved this film. I think people would agree that it's one of the best remakes of all time. It's right up there with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03. That remake was hardcore. It was perfect. It stood on its own legs. You could compare it to the first movie, to the original, but it still stood on its own legs. It was its own thing. And I think the same rules apply to this film. It's a fantastic zombie flick. It sort of reintroduced the idea of running zombies, actual dead people though, not like virus zombies like in 28 Days Later, who weren't actually dead people, but they were actually rotting corpses in this movie, and they looked absolutely scary. They sounded scary. The movie itself was scary. Very nihilistic, very serious. Spurts of comedy, spurts of levity, spurts of zaniness, but overall, the movie's very intense, very unforgiving, again, very nihilistic, perfect. I wouldn't change a damn thing about it. It's sort of a long film. Let's see how long this is. This is 101 minutes, so it's longer than typical modern zombie movies. Well, modern. This is 20 years ago now, actually. But I think it still could have been another hour. I would have taken a 3 or 4 hour cut of this film. I loved it so much. It was so damn good. So damn good. I think it's Zack Snyder's best work. A lot of people don't like Zack Snyder. I personally like Zack Snyder, but nothing has ever compared to what he's done with this film. And of course, by now you figured it out. I'm talking about 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Perfect. Masterpiece. Like some of my other titles, like an idiot, I sold the DVD copy that I had, which had all kinds of cool special features on it. But luckily, this has all the same special features and more, so I couldn't be happier with this release. I know it just came out on 4K last year, the year before. I haven't picked that up yet. I've heard good things. But at the same time, I'm happy with this release. Like, how many formats do we need to get, right? But that's a whole nother discussion. I won't go down that physical media road today, but Dawn of the Dead is just perfect. It's intense, fast-paced, legitimately scary, legitimately frightening. You believe the characters, you believe in the characters, you root for the characters. Great story, great intensity, just really feels nihilistic, it really feels apocalyptic, and you really believe what's going on. Much like the original Dawn of the Dead, this is just an epic zombie flick that is so perfectly rated, but it's so underrated at the same time, because this should be in everybody's top 5 zombie flick lists, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, it's all subjective, but this movie is so good. It blows my mind sometimes that some people just sort of brush it off as another zombie film, as another remake, and it's not. It is simply not. So with that said, without further ado, let's dive into 2004's remake, Dawn of the Dead, and see why it earns itself its number 5 spot in my personal top 10 favorite zombie flicks list of all time. Let's dive in. The 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead is a remarkable achievement in the realm of horror cinema, particularly among remakes and zombie movies. Avid fans of the zombie subgenre, like yours truly, often applaud Dawn of the Dead 04 as one of the best zombie films ever made. The movie skillfully balances homage and innovation, drawing enough elements from George A. Romero's 1978 original classic classic to be recognizable as a remake while simultaneously distinguishing itself with unique twists and turns of its own. This blend of old and new makes it a standalone spectacle, admired for its ability to respect its roots while charting a fresh, terrifying path in the zombie genre. The horror depicted in this remake is intense and unrelenting, creating a sense of genuine fear and urgency. The film's portrayal of zombies is a highlight, evolving from the unsettling realism in the early stages of the outbreak to the truly otherworldly and rotten as the film progresses. This evolution of the undead, especially in the later acts of the film, brings a visceral terror that penetrates to the core, making them some of the most horrifying zombies ever seen on screen. The frantic and frenetic pace of the movie amplifies this fear, rendering the viewing experience almost uncomfortably realistic. It's a testament to the film's effectiveness that it can evoke such a strong sense of dread and urgency, transporting viewers into the midst of a nightmarish scenario that feels all too real. The ensemble cast of Dawn of the Dead 04 is another one of its strengths, delivering memorable and diverse performances. Each character is distinct and well-crafted, contributing to the rich tapestry of the narrative itself. From the cartoony and zany to the relatable and quotable, nearly every character leaves a lasting impression. The setting of the mall, while perhaps not as expansive as in the original film, becomes a character in its own right. Initially cozy and inviting, it transforms into a claustrophobic and terrifying space, overrun by the undead near the end of the movie. The film's soundtrack, a mix of original score and contemporary tracks, further enhances the atmosphere, perfectly complementing the film's relentless pace and tone. This combination of character depth, setting, and music culminates in a movie that not only excels as a horror film, but also leaves viewers questioning the fate of its protagonists, contributing to its reputation as a masterful and beloved entry in the zombie genre. Alright, so that was Dawn of the Dead 04, perfect zombie flick. But with that said, we gotta move on to number 4. We're getting down to the wire, people. We're getting down to the wire. My number 4 spot was difficult for me because I flip-flopped this one and Dawn of the Dead every other day. But for this list, I felt comfortable putting this one at the number 4 spot, whereas Dawn of the Dead 04 is at the number 5 spot. I feel comfortable today. It might change tomorrow, negating this whole video, but for now, it's going at number 4. I feel comfortable about it. I feel good about it. And I think most people out there will agree with me based on legacy alone. But I have more points as to why this movie probably should be at number 4 above the remake, but we'll get into that later. As you all probably have already figured out, my number 4 spot goes to 1978's original, the George Romero classic, the sequel to Night of the Living Dead, 1978's Dawn of the Dead, the George Romero masterpiece, the juggernaut of zombie films, the tour de force of zombie films, one could say. This is sort of what is to zombie films that Wizard of Oz was to film overall. I don't know if that makes much sense, but to me it makes perfect sense. So I put it out there. Hopefully you can pick up what I'm putting down. But Dawn of the Dead is just a juggernaut. It is an absolute juggernaut of a horror movie. It's long, it's epic, it's fantastic. It's 127 minutes long. There's other cuts that I think there's shorter cuts out there. There's definitely longer cuts out there. There's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 cuts of the film. Sometimes I prefer the zombie cut, the Dario Argento cut, which was released as Zombie in Europe. This is why the Zombie 2 discrepancy with Lucio Fulci exists. But I'll get into that whole discrepancy in another breakdown video. But for now, Dawn of the Dead 78 is where it's at. But again, the Zombie Argento cut, sometimes I prefer it, but sometimes I like the original George Romero American cut, whatever you want to call that. This right here is a bootleg Blu-ray that I bought from eBay a couple of years ago because they hadn't yet released it officially in Region 1 on Blu-ray. I'm not sure if they have yet either. I think there's a Region 2 Blu-ray pack. I'm going to have to go and see. You guys can probably figure it out for me. I'm sure I'll get a million comments as to why I'm wrong about all the information I just presented. But as far as we're talking about Dawn of the Dead, which cut you're talking about, the movie is infamous. It is a masterpiece in its own right. Every cut that I've seen has been fantastic. And yeah, before I ramble for another 30 minutes about Dawn of the Dead's 65 cuts and the international name releases and the runtimes and all that stuff, let's dive into 1978's magnum opus zombie film, Dawn of the Dead, and see why it's earned its top spot in the number 4 slot on my top 10 favorite zombie flicks of all time list. Let's dive in. Dawn of the Dead, directed by George A. Romero and released in 1978, is not just a film, it's a monumental achievement in the zombie genre. The movie unfolds with a grandeur and scale that feels colossal, a quality amplified by its atmospheric musical score. Depending on the version you watch, the music by the band Goblin or tracks taken from the Daywolf Music Library expands the film's already vast scope. The combination of visual and auditory elements creates an immersive experience that draws viewers into its post-apocalyptic world. Dawn of the Dead stands as a testament to the enduring power of horror cinema, transcending its era to remain relevant and impactful. The brilliance of Dawn of the Dead lies in its unique blend of horror and eccentricity. It masterfully navigates the fine line between the eerie, dreadful slow burn of the zombie apocalypse and the captivating kinetic energy of survival. This balance is not easily achieved. It requires a harmonious blend of storytelling, character development, and pacing. The film juxtaposes true horror with bizarre 1970s zaniness, crafting a perfect amalgam that keeps viewers on the edges of their seats. It is technically a sequel to Night of the Living Dead, but Romero ingeniously designed these films to be viewed through a contemporary lens, creating a timeless quality where the events of night, dawn, and day unfold in close succession, despite their years of release. Dawn of the Dead excels in its character portrayal. The fantastic cast brings authenticity and depth to their roles. They create characters that the audience can empathize with, root for, and feel alongside as they navigate the challenges of a world overrun by zombies. While some may critique the film's makeup and the surreal bright red color of the blood, including me, these elements are minor when considering the film's frenetic grandeur. The movie's success isn't just in its storytelling or technical prowess, it is in its ability to create a world that feels both terrifyingly real and fantastically otherworldly. Dawn of the Dead isn't just a great zombie film, it's a landmark in cinematic history, influencing countless films and filmmakers in the decades following its release. And if you haven't seen it before, it's one of those rare experiences that will absolutely flip your lunch tray. Alright, so that was my number 4 pick, 1978's Dawn of the Dead. Great choice as far as I'm concerned. I think many of you will probably agree. But yeah, fantastic stuff. Great zombie flick, a masterpiece, fantastic stuff. But now, we're actually in the top 3 spots, which is crazy. We're getting through this list pretty quickly, if I do say so myself. But for my number 3 spot, it's going to have to go to the 1985 punk rock classic, the masterpiece itself, The Return of the Living Dead. 1985. This is a brand new shrink-wrapped copy of the film on DVD. I sold my original copy of this exact version like an idiot, like I mentioned before, in my DVD purge a few years ago. Got this for cheap, on Amazon no less. Maybe it was on eBay, and it's shrink-wrapped. It's not just in a bag, it's actually bagged and shrink-wrapped. As you can see at the label, it's still labeled in its original shrink-wrap, and it's also bagged. So very cool. I'm going to leave it like this for a while. I'm probably not going to open it because there's no real need to. It looks too cool like this. But Return of the Living Dead 85. I also have this version here. Shrink wrapped. Bagged. This one's not open either. It doesn't have the white label like the other one does, but I actually opened up the sleeve when I first got it because I thought maybe it was pre-owned, and it's shrink wrapped inside the sleeve as well, so that's good stuff. And obviously there's the Blu-ray also. I have yet to buy the 4K because I'm slacking, I guess. I have yet to buy much of anything the last couple months. I'm just slacking, guys. I'm slacking. But yeah, The Return of the Living Dead is just fantastic. Released in 1985. It's a magnum opus as far as I'm concerned. Number 3 spot for me. If my number 2 and number 1 spots didn't exist, this would absolutely be my number 1 pick of all time. I love the soundtrack. I love the score. The acting is fantastic. The characters are completely memorable. Every single one of them. They all do great jobs in their respective roles. Everybody did great in this film. The story's great. The special effects are out of this world. The visual effects, the sound effects, everything about this movie's production, from conceptual to execution to what we see on the screen, is just perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Even the runtime's perfect. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's perfect. It is intense. There's a real intensity to this film that I think a lot of people overlook. It's genuinely frightening. It's a horror comedy, but it is genuinely frightening. There's a lot of really scary, intense stuff in this film that we'll talk about. Stuff like the Tar Man, or the frenetic, fast-paced music in certain scenes. The crew of kids running from the cemetery as the dead's coming back to life and the acid rain's pouring down. It has a real nihilistic flavor to it, a real hopeless nature to it. There's a real sense of apocalyptic overtone, I guess you could say. Might be the right phrase for it, but it's hardcore. This is a hardcore zombie flick. One of the best zombie flicks ever made. Again, it would be my top choice if the other two movies didn't exist. This probably is the first zombie flick that really solidified my love for the zombie genre way, way back in the Videoland VHS days, early 90s. I was probably 3, 4, or 5 when I first saw this movie, not even lying. And I've loved it ever since. It has scared me ever since. Even to this day, when I watch the film, I can love it and appreciate it, even though I know how this movie was made, all the cast involved, all the secrets to the special effects, how they did this, how they did that, who did this, who did that. The movie still manages to give me that feeling of uneasy dread. It is just a uneasy, dreadful, unnerving adventure masterpiece, and I love every second of it. Every part of this film I love. I would not change a damn thing about it. But without that said, to keep me from rambling longer, let's dive into The Return of the Living Dead and why it's earned its spot at my number 3 choice in my overall top 10 favorite zombie flicks of all time list. Let's dive in. Return of the Living Dead, released in 1985, can be considered nothing less than a monumental achievement in the zombie genre, earning its place as not just one of the greatest zombie movies of all time, but one of the greatest horror movies of all time in general. Its blend of horror and humor is masterfully crafted, striking a rare balance that many films aspire to, but few achieve. The film is an adrenaline-fueled roller coaster, oscillating between sheer terror and absurd humor. Its pace is frantic and frenetic, capturing the essence of a nightmare, where escape seems impossible. This intense realism makes the movie more of a visceral experience. It's both terrifying and hilarious in equal measure. The comedic elements, surprisingly, do not detract from the film's unnerving atmosphere. Instead, they add a unique flavor that enriches the overall experience. The visual portrayal of zombies in Return of the Living Dead is nothing short of remarkable. These aren't your run-of-the-mill undead. They are depicted as decayed, cartoonish, yet eerily realistic, striking a perfect balance between the grotesque and the uncanny. Characters like Tar Man have left an indelible mark on the genre, his terrifying appearance acting as nightmare fuel for a slew of moviegoers over the last several decades. This movie's zombies are arguably among the most frightening ever seen in cinema, a testament to the film's exceptional makeup and special effects work. dark. Alongside these horrifying creatures, the film boasts an unforgettable cast. Tom Matthews, Clu Gallagher, James Karen, and Don Calfa deliver performances brimming with comedic genius, enhancing the film's unique tone. The ensemble cast, featuring notably hilarious zany characters like Bert, Frank, Freddy, Ernie, Trash, Suicide, and Spider, is equally impressive. Each character is memorable, relatable, and delightfully quirky, adding depth and color to the story. The setting of Return of the Living Dead, the Unita Medical Supply Warehouse, and the adjacent graveyard is ingeniously utilized, adding to the film's spooky ambiance. These locations are integral to the narrative, providing a perfect backdrop for the unfolding chaos. Additionally, the film's soundtrack is a standout, with both the original score and contemporary tracks significantly contributing to the film's mood. Featuring artists like 45 Grave, Flesh Eaters, and The Cramps, the soundtrack is an iconic compilation that perfectly complements the film's tone. Finally, the film's conclusion is as grim as it is impactful. None of the protagonists survive, leaving a lasting impression of hopelessness and despair. This bold narrative choice underscores the film's relentless, realistic portrayal of a zombie apocalypse. Return of the Living Dead isn't just a great zombie movie, it's a masterpiece of horror cinema, beloved for its unique blend of terror, humor, and unforgettable characters. Alright, so that was our number 3 choice, or my number 3 choice, I should say. The Return of the Living Dead, the 1985 masterpiece, definitely earned its top spot in my top number 3. But with that said, let's move on to my number 2 spot. Now, I went back and forth. Well, actually, I still go back and forth with these to this day. There's no doubt, in my mind, which top 2 zombie flicks are in my top 2 slots. For the last 10-15 years, it's been the same. The problem is, I flip-flop back and forth so much. Like on the daily, I swap these two back and forth of which one I like more, which one I like less. But like the discrepancy with Dawn of the Dead 04 and 78, I've sort of come to a comfortable realization of which one I like more, and I feel comfortable putting it here on video. Of course, tomorrow I'll probably wake up angry tomorrow because I should have put this in number 10, or number 1, but today I feel good about it. Maybe next year I'll do a re-ranking if one of them changes, but I doubt it, because just keep in mind in the back of your noggins that whatever my number 2 and number 1 choices are, keep in mind that next year they could be flip-flop, but it's always probably going to be those number 1 or 2 in the number 1 or 2 slots. So with that said, my number 2 spot for my all-time favorite zombie movies list is the 1979 Italian zombie classic. From the man, the myth, the legend himself, Lucio Fulci. And of course, everybody out there in digital land knows what movie I'm talking about. And if you don't know, I'm of course talking about Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2. AKA Zombie Flesh Eaters, AKA Zombie, AKA Voodoo. There's a million other names it was released under, but Zombie 2 is a magnum opus. It is Lucio Fulci's magnum opus. It is a tour de force of zombie flicks. It is a tour de force of horror movies in general. This movie is so good that I could probably spend 4 hours if I scripted myself and actually scripted myself with something so I wouldn't ramble on like a stupid idiot for 4 hours. I could talk about this movie for 4 hours straight and still not have said everything about the movie that I want to say about it. It is so good and so genuinely scary and frightening and fills you with such a palpable, palatable sense of dread and impending doom. The acting's fantastic. Some of it's cheesy, I think intentionally. A lot of that has to do with the weird dubbing from the international releases. Ian McCulloch as Peter West is one of my favorite protagonists in any horror movie, let alone zombie films. The original score by Fabio Frizzi, fantastic. One of the best soundtracks in horror. One of the best film soundtracks in general. Great stuff. The pacing, the tone, the ambiance, the overall flavor, the nihilistic nature, the hopelessness, the isolation of the island setting, the desperation of the characters, the intensity, the walls are closing in feeling the movie really executes by its third act. Unbeatable, unmatchable, almost unexplainable. There's a reason there's so many video essays on Zombie 2 and the work Lucio Fulci did for Zombie 2. And I don't think as a people we're ever going to tire of talking about Zombie. It is so good. It is so damn good. I'll probably say it's so good at least 55 or 56 more times before the night's over. But Zombie 2 really is, it is a masterpiece of masterpieces. It's not my number one, but again, it flip-flops. It really is close. I think my number one spot has it over this film, but this movie's right there. I mean, it's a pin hair away from being the number one spot. It is so good and so scary, so frightening, and it sticks with you long after you've seen the film. You almost feel like you have to take a shower after you've watched Zombie 2. It feels humid, gross, disgusting, unforgiving, unrelenting. This is Italian horror zombie bliss, as far as I'm concerned. So without further ado, let's dive into my number 2 choice out of my top 10 favorite zombie flicks of all time list. Lucio Fulci's magnum opus, Zombie 2. Zombie 2, also known as Zombie, Voodoo, Zombie Flesh Eaters, or Other, is a remarkable triumph in the realm of zombie cinema, a triumph directed by the visionary Lucio Fulci and released in 1979. This Italian zombie adventure, which originally thrived under the illusion of being a sequel to George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, is a cinematic tour de force that has garnered immense appreciation over the years. The film stars Tisa Farrow, Ian McCulloch, and Richard Johnson, with an evocative score by Fabio Frizzi, a frequent collaborator of Fulci. The plot unfolds with a sense of mounting dread as a scientist's daughter ventures to a Caribbean island following her father's mysteriously abandoned boat arriving in the New York City harbor. Ian McCulloch's portrayal of the protagonist Peter West and Richard Johnson's portrayal of Dr. Menard are notably fantastic, adding depth and sincerity to a cast that masterfully balances the line between fantastic and slightly cheesy performances. The setting of the film on a voodoo-cursed Caribbean island is a stroke of genius, providing a uniquely creepy and claustrophobic atmosphere that amplifies the horror and dread. This backdrop plays a pivotal role in the film's ambiance, heightening the sense of isolation and danger. The film's approach to zombie creation, attributing their existence to voodoo rather than scientific explanations, adds an extra layer of eeriness. The depiction of the zombies is particularly noteworthy. Their appearance is disturbingly executed, contributing significantly to the film's lasting impact in the horror genre. The zombie featured on the film's poster, although only briefly appearing in the movie itself, has since become one of the most iconic representations of the undead in the zombie subgenre, a testament to the film's influence and Fulci's visionary direction. Despite its modest budget, Zombie 2 was a financial success, earning several times its production cost and international revenues. The film's journey, however, has been tumultuous, initially attracting controversy and being labeled a video nasty in the United Kingdom. However, over time, it has garnered critical acclaim and developed a devoted cult following. The production, which took place in Italy, New York, and Santo Domingo, was not without its challenges, including the absence of trailers for the actors and an underwater scene featuring a shark, allegedly shot without Fulci's consent. The film's legacy is further enriched by the intriguing backstory of its creation, including the influence of previous zombie tales and the film's initially unintended connection to Romero's Dawn of the Dead. This legacy, combined with Fulci's expert direction, the eerie island setting, and the formidable cast, cements Zombie 2 as a masterpiece in the zombie film genre, and one of my all-time favorite zombie movies ever. All right, we are down to the number one choice, people. We are down to the number one choice. That was Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2. I feel very comfortable in putting this as my number 2 spot. It's a fantastic film. It's a perfect zombie flick. I probably wouldn't change a thing. I wish we had like a 9-hour cut of this film. I could watch it endlessly. Great soundtrack. Everything about it's great. Don't need to say anything else. Could always say something else, but don't need to at this moment. My number 2 choice. Moving on to my number 1 choice. The zombie film to end all zombie films as far as I'm concerned. It came out in 1985. It is technically the third part of, at the time, a trilogy. The movies are sort of meant to be seen in contemporary succession, sort of as if the previous movie happened recently and compared to the most recent film. These movies came out years apart from one another, but they're sort of meant to be seen in quick succession narratively. And this movie, again, I saw this movie in the 90s on VHS. It was a rental from Videoland. Blew my mind. Absolutely gory. The sense of isolation and small spaces was even at more of a fever pitch than that of Zombie. The zombies looked absolutely horrifying. They acted feral. They were gross. They were rotten. They made really scary sound effects. All of the cast in the movie, the small amount of cast members that works, it's a very isolated team of people in this movie. If they're not straight up good guys, if they're not straight up protagonists, they're zany, they're crazy, sometimes villainous. A lot of them are villainous, but the ones who aren't villainous but aren't necessarily protagonists are unnerving because they're so wacky and out there and otherworldly, because you know that the apocalypse has taken a toll on their minds and they've just lost it. There's a real Caribbean flair to the score of the film. Perfect. It's a perfect musical score. The locations are fantastic. They shot some of the film in Fort Myers, Florida, which is not too many hours to drive from my own house. The pacing, the editing, the characters, the acting, the lighting choices, the music choices, the overall tone of the film, the feng shui of how things flow from one scene to the other, the really disturbing speech that one of the main characters gives to our protagonist about how this zombie apocalypse is probably not caused by science or anything that we can, as people, explain, but maybe it's punishment by the Almighty. Gives it this weird, ethereal, supernatural dread of impending doom, that maybe this is caused by something bigger that we can't explain, something angry with us as a people, and he's punishing us by raising the dead. There's something so thought-provoking and so apocalyptically, cosmically scary about that concept to me, that it blew my mind. It still blows my mind to this day. And it's one of the few zombie flicks that seems to have a good ending at the very tail end of the film. The magnum opus of all magnum opus zombie films as far as I'm concerned. George Romero's tour de force over Dawn of the Dead. I'm talking about none other than 1985's Day of the Dead. Also featuring one of the most iconic zombies of all time, Bub. Fantastic stuff. Definitely has earned... Now again, I flip-flop with Zombie 2. But as far as I'm concerned, on this day, Day of the Dead just has it. It is the zombie flick to end all zombie flicks. You hope and pray you're never in a situation like the characters in this film. It's that kind of movie. It's great. It's fantastic. It's perfect. I will not change a thing about it. Even the runtime, I think, is probably perfect. Now, I always say I want longer films, and that's true with some of the other choices. But with this movie, it's so perfect how everything comes together. You know, if I was given a 4-hour cut of the film, I wouldn't complain. But there's something so perfect about the length of this film. It's almost mind-blowing. How perfect everything comes together. How perfect everything falls apart and then comes together. Perfect timing. Great film. So, as always, before I continue rambling into the ether, let's dive into my number one choice of my greatest zombie flicks of all time and see why Day of the Dead 85 has earned its number one spot on my top 10 list. Let's dive in. Day of the Dead, directed by George A. Romero, is a film that has cemented its place as one of the pinnacles of zombie cinema. For me, personally, the film's only competition for the top spot of my all-time favorite zombie flicks is Zombie 2, yet more often than not, Day of the Dead frequently emerges as my number one choice. Day of the Dead is hands down the best of the Romero Dead movies, offering the best in characters, dialogue, action, and frightening zombie sequences. Its status as the finest of Romero's undead saga is something that I never question. It is absolutely perfect. The characters of John and Bill, portrayed by Terry Alexander and Jarloth Conroy respectively, are standout elements in the film. Their portrayal is so engaging that they feel like people I would want to know and hang out with in real life. Joe Pilato's portrayal of Captain Rhodes is particularly noteworthy, a crazed villain with a foul mouth that I often consider to be the best villain in horror cinema overall. Laurie Cardill's character, Sarah, our main protagonist, is the quintessential final girl of zombie movies, embodying strength and resilience that continually has us rooting for her character throughout the film. Richard Liberty's portrayal of Dr. Logan also adds a unique, zany element to the narrative, and his character is so lovably insane, it is absolutely bonkers, and I love it. The film's atmosphere is significantly shaped by its setting in the mines, which contributes to a spooky, dark, and claustrophobic ambiance. Complementing this ambiance is John Harrison's original score, with its Caribbean flair, which I believe to be one of the best horror soundtracks of all time, particularly in the realm of zombie films. The narrative, steeped in dread yet offering a glimmer of hope towards the end, presents a compelling dichotomy. The film's zombies, aggressive and feral, stand out as the most terrifying zombies seen in the entire Dead series, a testament to Tom Savini's excellent makeup effects. The movie, adored for its sheer impact and depth, leaves us wishing for an extended version, a further testament to its enduring appeal. Day of the Dead is an absolute juggernaut in the realm of zombie cinema, and I couldn't love it more if I tried. And John's speech about the undead situation possibly being a punishment from the Almighty adds an incredibly creepy undertone to the film, saying this may be more than science can explain, and may be something completely beyond our control, but completely intentional. Great, great movie. Fantastic stuff. Alright, so that was my number one choice. 1985's Day of the Dead. The quintessential magnum opus tour de force zombie flick to end all magnum opus tour de force zombie flicks. George Romero's 1985 masterpiece, Day of the Dead. The perfect zombie flick of all time. Of all time. So there you have it. That's the whole list. We did it. Right here on episode 4 of Candy Bar Creepshow. But before we end this episode of the podcast, I sort of want to dive into a couple, not many, maybe 5, of my honorable mention choices of honorable mention zombie flicks, featuring the likes of stuff like Cemetery Man, Diary of the Dead, Zombie 3, aka Zombie Flesh Eaters 2. Let's dive into some of my honorable mentions and briefly go over why they didn't make the top 10 list, but should be mentioned. Let's talk about it. Starting with Diary of the Dead, this film stands out for its distinctive approach. Directed by George Romero, the mastermind behind many foundational zombie movies, it adopts a first-person perspective, immersing the audience directly into the chaos of a zombie outbreak. This stylistic choice not only revitalizes the genre, but also adds a layer of immediacy and realism to the horror. Cemetery Man, known in Italy as Della Morte dell'Amore, takes a more surreal and darkly comedic approach. This film blends elements of romance, existential philosophy, and macabre humor, setting it apart from the typical zombie narratives. Its unique tone and style make it a cult classic, beloved for its departure from conventional zombie tropes. Zombie 3, while often overshadowed by its predecessor Zombie 2, is noteworthy for its sheer, unbridled creativity and wildness. The film, with contributions from horror legends Lucio Fulci and Bruno Mattei, offers a less coherent but more unpredictable experience, full of bizarre scenes and over-the-top action scenes that have earned it a special place among aficionados of the zombie subgenre. Finally, The Dead Next Door, an ambitious, low-budget film, is remarkable for its DIY, ethos, and the passion of its production. Funded in part by Sam Raimi, director of The Evil Dead, this film encapsulates a grassroots spirit in horror filmmaking. Its enthusiasm and commitment to the zombie genre shine through its limitations, offering a raw and authentic experience. Together, these films represent the breadth and depth of the zombie genre, each bringing its unique flavor to the undead table. They may not be the most widely recognized, but for enthusiasts of zombie cinema, they are indispensable contributions to the subgenre. Alright guys, so as always, thanks for watching. I really enjoy doing these little brief Candy Bar Creepshow podcast episodes. I had a lot of fun breaking down my top 10 favorite zombie lists. I was thinking about making the episode a little bit longer, but I was like, you know what? Let's just make it short and sweet this time. It's episode 4. It's a top 10 list. It doesn't require a 2-hour length. So it's sort of like, let's let it go. Wherever it ends up, it ends up. So if it's a 57-minute episode, great. If it's a 45-minute episode, great. If it's 2 hours, great. But I have a feeling by the time you're watching this, it's probably around the 35, 45-minute mark, right? Am I right? Well, you tell me. You're watching the episode. What's the timestamp right now? What's the timestamp? But I digress. I really want to thank you guys for watching Candy Bar Creepshow. I want to do more of these really specific topic episodes for the podcast. Next month for Valentine's Day, I want to kind of go through some Valentine's Day content for that podcast episode. Again, I can't promise a runtime for it. I do want to start doing longer podcast episodes. I really want to get the later episodes to a 2-hour format, but I'm still sort of breaking in the podcast format, what I want to do with the show, where I want it to go. Do I want to have a co-host? Do I want to keep it solo? That kind of stuff is still being worked out, but I want to keep putting out Candy Bar Creepshow content in the meantime. I think by Halloween 2024, so a year from the first episode, if I keep doing these monthly, I'll sort of have my permanent format worked out, hopefully a permanent length, how I'm going to do the show, guest formats, stuff like that. But until then, we're going to have a good time. I don't want to always just spit out live streams for the sake of doing live streams. I want to do, strict content-specific or theme-specific episodes of this podcast. I can pre-record it, edit it, give it a little bit of pizzazz and flair, and then release it upon the world. So that's my closing ramble to my top 10 favorite zombie flicks of all time video. If you're watching this in 2025 or beyond or whenever, disregard everything I just said because nothing applies because it's already happened. It's in the past and you're now in the future, which is crazy, and I just confuse myself. So with that said, I'm going to sign off for the night. Again, thank you for watching Candy Bar Creepshow. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications to stay informed on all the stuff I post. And don't forget to go and like TobattoVision TV. It's my non-horror channel. And don't forget to go like Tobatto Tunes. It's my music-only channel. And I love you guys. Have a safe rest of your January, which is at this point is probably only a couple hours because it's January 31st at the time you're watching this. But I'll see you guys again in February for the next episode of Candy Bar Creepshow. And until then, I want you guys to leave me your personal top 10 favorite zombie films lists in the comments. I will try to review and comment on every single comment I get, if I get any comments at all. I don't know. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But let me know your top 10 lists, and I will see you guys next time.